It's not on here. It's not on. Was it for
Yes. Right.
Yeah, just letting everyone know I've just started the stream. So we are. I've just turned around. It's got a lag, so we're a little bit behind, but just so that everyone's aware.
Yep. 3 minutes.
Yep.
Glass.
That last experience.
All right.
When I sit on the side of the Irish for information. So I pulled this one out and just briefly mentioned that the motion that we LG AGM was successful. Or was it around 82% in favour?
There's only 4 votes against. It was like 90.
I think it was 91% in
Yeah.
favour.
She's happy with it. So
I might also mention the
another job table.
was the motion that potentially getting an additional year.
Oh yeah, it does. But that's not. That's
Or changing the
Changing the date.
So I don't years ago.
State election.
It's changed from adding it to changing the date. It's Chris Hanna's amendment went up only just 52.
So he was in favour of changing the date. I thought the motion was adding a year as opposed to a specific date, because the motion had a specific date that said 26, 27. I'll show you like that, because that's kind of interesting.
I'll get the show the published minutes. So you know when they moved the motion in the general meeting, they moved the motion, Nevine moved the motion to give us an extra year of the term, and Chris Hanna moved amendment to not give an extra year, just change the year. So leave it to the state government. That was voted on as an amendment. I thought it succeeded.
Michael Hewitson was saying it was that he believed it was going to be 6 months to make it March 26, so that it was March 27 to make it exactly a year after
So that would just be,
It could be, yeah, but he said that would be, he thought that was what was going to be done, because that would make it exactly a year. Two elections in the same year anymore.
They haven't published the minutes, so I can't be sure. Trini, you don't remember the motion that was moved to, about the extra year versus the change the year? So Chris Hanna's amendment to Nevine's motion at the AGM. Was Chris Hanna's amendment successful or not? For that,
it was
giving an extra 12 months. Well, if Chris Hanna's motion amendment was successful, it's not add an extra year. It was advocate for a change in the year, which is different. That was the difference between the amendment and the motion. I'm pretty confident the amendment was successful, but only just 52 to 48.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Ordinary Council meeting being held at Bayindi Tuesday the 26th of November 2024, our second last council meeting for the year. What a year it's been. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land. The City of Prospect acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Now the Council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Thank you. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, on leave to renewal. Item 3 on the agenda, apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Mark Standard. He apologises that he's having such a fabulous time in Japan. He would love to be here, but he preferred to be there as well. Item 4 on the agenda, declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Now, I just want to make note that when we come to the Deputy Mayor appointment 10.1, because that position comes with additional remuneration, the person who should we go to a ballot and we choose someone through that ballot, or if there's only one nominee, at that point in time, that person will need to declare a conflict of interest and will need to go for the moving, seconding, discussion and the vote on that item. So up until that point in time, no one needs to leave, but at that point in time, that person will need to declare a conflict of interest and then exit until we've had our discussion and voted on the motion. So hold your horses on declaring a conflict of interest on that one, but are there any other declarations by members of a conflict of interest for any other item on the agenda? That being the case, we'll move on to item 5, confirmation of minutes. So this is a confirmation of the minutes held on the 22nd of October and the special council meeting held on the 29th of October. Do I have a mover? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Mark Crew, would you like to speak to the motion?
Last time, no thank you.
There's probably no further discussion required and therefore no reason to sum up, so I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. That's item 5. Item 6, public question time. So I don't believe we have any. Oh, we have one member of the public here, but in that case, we now open the floor to questions from members of the public. We can take, I think, up to 5 questions for 3 minutes each. So, are there any questions from members of the public?
No pressure.
You sure? You've got 5 opportunities.
I have no.
Okay, that'll be a nil. Item 7, petitions nil. Item 8, deputations nil. Item 9, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Backer, how would I know?
I know. I'll just let you know ahead of time.
Thank you.
Being quiet. Yeah, so thank you. I just want a couple that I'd like to ask. We had a really interesting meeting last Tuesday at a workshop, and the presentation by the staff and the consultants had a lot of information, to digest. And one of the things was the percentage increases in space. And there was a few terms we used. So the question I'm asking is, what are the definitions for open space, green space, and community open space as it relates to the concept and figures presented for the PLP project? And how are the calculations conducted for maintaining existing tree canopy and increasing tree canopy over the concepts?
Great question, CEO. We should direct that one to Mr. Pearce, I imagine.
Thank you, CEO, and through the Mayor, I will try and answer both of those questions. First one relating to open space and the definitions of open space, green space, and community open space. The official definition of open space, according to the Parks and Leisure Australia Design Guide, is really to do with a publicly accessible space that exercises benefits from a social perspective, so a place of gathering, from a health perspective, so areas that activity can be undertaken. Also from an environmental perspective, where it is environmentally positive, the overall environment, and an area that is economically beneficial. In other words, an area that potentially is a draw card for visitors. So all that says to us is that that is kind of the official definition of open space. Coming to the PLP, the baseline figure we have been using so far has been 23% of the existing PLP is open green space. And really what that is we've tried to simplify it up until now to, I guess, another way of saying it is somewhere where all those 4 conditions are satisfied, somewhere you could actually sit down and have a picnic. And so the official definition, however, that I just outlined would also incorporate the oval. We haven't included the oval because in PLP there's an assumption that the oval will continue into the future. So that underlines the approach we've taken so far. Given the fact that you mentioned potentially, and given the conversations the other night, that there might be some misunderstanding or some confusion, we'd be very happy to outline a table showing the definition of using the official definition of open space. Put a table in with the areas we currently have as a baseline and put that on the engagement hub for anybody to have a look at, so that it can therefore be referenced in whatever final options we arrive at, the 3 options. So that is really to do with the open space piece. The second part of your question around tree canopy and the existing tree canopy. There is a baseline calculation of tree canopy that we have used for community open space, and that is based on Green Adelaide's Urban Heat and Tree Canopy Mapping Project in 2022, which used what's called a LIDAR technology and thermal imaging to map the green canopy. We haven't started doing that yet. We're not ready to start doing that until we land on the 3 preferred options. And the way we will move forward and look at potential increase in tree canopy will be calculated using expected mature tree heights of minimum 3 metres in the canopy on those mature trees. And that all gets measured in forecasts that we will undertake once the final options are arrived at. So tree canopy is a little different and measurements are a little different to the open space one that I defined previously, but we're not really at the stage to be able to suitably forecast. We can certainly calculate what we've got now. It's baseline there, and we have, but not we're not forecasting any of that just yet. We're not quite ready.
Thank you. I'll do a follow-up question that might just be taken on notice. But yeah, I think the survey went out with green space or green open space. So I think it's just a clarification of those 2 terms. And obviously Festival Plaza is hardscaping, shelter, but it's not necessarily green space. I think, it's just really what the community anticipates. So it's maybe taken on notice. There's a second question just in regards to how is the City of Prospect currently communicating with site-adjacent residents that have been identified in the Audit Committee report as a defined stakeholder group? Just, a few of the elected members have been contacted regarding recent workshops. We're just trying to make sure that we're capturing and communicating with those stakeholders.
Mr. Pearce?
Yeah, through the Mayor and CEO, I guess we've undertaking our communication with the community and residents. I'm starting with the larger picture, of course, the larger pie, which was phase 1 community consultation, and some direct community member workshops and sessions that were held throughout that process. And we also are communicating through the representation of local residents on the community reference group. That the most recent meeting of which was last night, in actual fact, and there were a number of joining residents there as well. Our project manager and our admin assistant letterbox dropped all of the local residents on the 24th of September along Kintore, Wilcox and Flora Terrace. And in that letter, we outlined the process that we were undertaking, communicating directly with those residents, but also if they had any particular questions and specific questions, to please reach out to our project team with the email and phone number that we provided each of those residents with. And so far there's been one response coming back to contact Stacey, our PLP project manager, which has been dealt with appropriately. And we would also like to encourage all local residents that have got questions to come to the project team, and they'll be given an individual attention if they so require, notwithstanding the other platforms of communication that continue to be available, not the least of which is the engagement hub.
So Mr. Pearce, the PLP at Prospect email address would be an appropriate method of contact for that?
Great questions, Councillor De Backer. Particularly the first one, there was a lot of interest at the workshop, members of the public, and given that we've got a benchmark that we're starting from, and one of our goals is to increase that in a legitimate sense, if we were to have a clear definition. Any other questions without notice? That being the case, we'll move on to item 10, reports for decision. Oops. First one, item 10.1, appointment of Deputy Mayor, recommendations on page 5. So I just want to outline broadly how we're going to approach 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4 and 10.5 because they're all potentially the same. So first step will be to call for nominations. If there are more nominations than positions, go the other way. If there aren't more nominations than positions, we will simply add in the name, we'll call for a mover and a second, and we'll have discussion, we'll vote, and then that's the outcome, and that's the simplest scenario. Alternatively, if we have more nominations for any of the positions than there are positions, I'll suspend meeting procedures. We'll then run a secret ballot on each one separately. We're not doing them all together. Once we declare the results, we'll simply add the name into the recommendation, and then we'll revert back to formal meeting procedures, and then we'll move and second, debate, sum up, and then vote. So that's the way that we'll do it for each one. And as I mentioned, the only one where there is a conflict of interest is item 10.1. The other ones don't come with any financial benefit. Just a great sense of contribution to the council. It's very heartwarming, and it's immeasurable. If you had to put a number on it, I'd say 180,000 would be the number. But apart from that, let's get on with it. So item 10.1, appoint a deputy mayor. You can either nominate yourself or be nominated, and if you are nominated, then I'll then ask you if you're going to accept the nomination. So are there any nominations for the position of Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor Mark Creek.
I'd like to nominate for Deputy... No, sorry, old habits. I'd like to... had you all worried, didn't I? I'd like to nominate Councillor Nelson for a period of 1 year.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Okay, are there any further nominations, Councillor?
Yes, I'd like to nominate my co-ward councillor, Councillor Trin.
Thank you, Councillor Trinwin. Do you accept the nomination? Thank you.
I do.
So let's just get the term nailed, which I think should be fairly simple. We've done it for a year for the last 2 or 3 terms of council. I think that's reasonable, unless anybody's violently opposed to 1 year. I'm going to be so bold as to put a 1 here. Last call, everyone's happy with 1 year, excellent. Okay, so I will now suspend meeting procedures, and I'll just say 15 minutes to give us plenty of time. We will run a ballot.
All those in favour?
Question. Question.
2/3, yeah.
Question. Sorry.
Go for it.
Did we get to hear from the candidates?
We will, yeah.
Oh, okay. Just checking before they leave the room.
Yeah, we're just going to suspend meeting procedures. We'll then, and I'm just going to do that in order of the nominations. So I'll start with Councillor Nelson, and then I'll go to Councillor Levin. So, show of hands for suspending the meeting procedures. I need 2/3. Good. Okay, so I think we agreed on 4 minutes for each candidate to speak to the floor. So I'll start, as I said, I'm going to go in order of the nominations we received. So Councillor Nelson, if you'd like to speak first, and your time starts now.
Time.
Yeah.
I thought I had like 20 minutes.
4 minutes.
Sure.
We've got to finish early.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Groot, for the nomination, and thank you for your service for the last 2 years as well, and your last 14 years. Congratulations
7
on
years.
14 years in
It's
council.
counting.
So I guess I have prepared a few notes here, and obviously prior to being prepared to nominate for the role, I wanted to ensure that I better understand the council workings. And as part of that, I made sure that I put myself out there, and I did terms on council assessment panel, I did terms on audit and risk committee, I've done terms on CEO performance committee, strategic planning committee, and various other working groups. I think the deputy mayor role is obviously a very important role to support the mayor and act on his behalf when he's away or unavailable or ill. My role as chairman of Lincoln College has given me vast experience in chairing meetings. We have a board there of 9. I've got experience in speaking publicly, dealing with key stakeholders and dealing with the media. So I have that experience required. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And I get at times that can be very confronting. I'm sure we've all experienced that with me. But it is what our community appreciates. I get very good feedback about my mannerisms and my approach, and it leaves no room for ambiguity. So after attending the National General Assembly in Canberra over the last two years, that gave me a lot more experience and skill in advocacy for key stakeholders. Met with a number of federal and state ministers, both here and in Canberra, advocating for our 4 advocacy projects here. So I've got that experience as well. And I've already stepped up in a number of times on behalf of the mayor to host football at Prospect Oval. I did a speaking event at Catherine House event. I've spoken and presented a award to the Tonk Club, and attended various other engagements on behalf of the mayor and behalf of council. The other thing, I think I'm fortunate enough to be able to schedule my other work commitments around council. I've always put council first in my scheme of things. We're focused on the community, and I've always been fortunate enough to work my work commitments around council events. I think we're heading into possibly the most important 18 months of our term. We have both state and federal elections coming up, and we need to maximise every opportunity to network and advocate for funding from various projects, not the least being PLP and Broadview Tennis Club. And our mayor needs assistance and experienced support to do this. Finally, when I was thinking about running for council, my friends and colleagues warned me against it. I've never hit that. They told me I would get frustrated and I'd get bogged down. I'm an advocate of action. I want to get things done, and I believe we've done that. I don't ask why, I ask why not. And I believe this is a good quality of a deputy mayor. I believe I'm well suited to the role, and my experience would benefit our community if I was given the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. You've got 50 seconds left if you want to.
No, I think.
Good.
Thank
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Groot again.
I'll take it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. I'd like now to move to Councillor Trindwin. And again, you'll have up to 4 minutes for your presentation, and your time starts now.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am happy to accept the nomination. I am grateful to have been encouraged by several elected members to run for this position. It is quite humbling to be recognised by your peers in this way, and I'm committed to meeting your expectations as elected. As an elected member serving my first term in council, I'm very proud of what I've achieved so far. I've had the privilege of being on numerous committees and community groups, including the EHA Community Board as a board member, the co-chair of the Kamunga PDP Steering Group, and a member of PAN and a member of the citywide Public Art Roundtable. These experiences have helped me develop a broad understanding of my role as an elected member, and I look forward to continuing these positions in the future. I also volunteer my time with Railcare at all 3 stations in our community, including Ovingham, Dudley and Islington Station, and I'm also a member of the Churchill Greening Steering Committee. I spend a lot of my hours participating in working bees and cleanups. I enjoy being hands-on and being able to contribute my time and energy to these projects to beautify and enrich our community. Additionally, my involvement with the local Lions Club has allowed me to help in many community initiatives, and I'm always eager to lend a hand where it's needed the most. These experiences have helped me connect with our community in a meaningful way. I also host regular Corner Street meetings with my co-councillor, Christina, where we invite local residents and business owners for morning tea. I started this when I first campaigned for the role as elected member, and thought it was a great way to stay connected to the community. These informal gatherings allow me to listen to concerns, share updates, and better understand the issues affecting our residents and our business owners. I also produce a Westward newsletter, which I co-edit with a local resident, Kate Barrett. I design, edit, print, and personally hand these out to local homes and businesses. It's just another way I am keeping the community informed about upcoming events and important matters. I pride myself on being a proactive councillor with a can-do mindset, always ready to roll up my sleeves and get things done. And as a young local business owner, I believe I bring a unique perspective to the council, one that reflects the entrepreneurial spirit and challenges faced by business owners in our community. This experience, along with my deep commitment to service, enables me to represent a broader demographic, one that has not had a voice in the chamber before. And as I am an owner of my own business, I have the flexibility to manage my own time, which has been demonstrated thus far by the amount of community events and other commitments I have been involved in. If given the honour of being elected as Deputy Mayor, I promise to bring the same energy and dedication and fresh perspective to the role, and I'll continue my strong relationship building skills with all stakeholders. I am passionate and committed to representing our community, and I look forward to the opportunity to support the Mayor and elected members, and I would uphold the role with integrity and a relentless focus on our community's future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Trinwin. You have 46 seconds left if you want to repeat anything.
It's almost like we timed it together, isn't it?
Should have said 3 minutes just to put this torch on. Thank you both for your presentations and for accepting the nominations. We'll now hand out the voting papers and we'll now vote.
So all we're looking for is just a tick next to the name of either Councillor Nelson or Councillor Stephanie.
Are we stepping out, please?
No, you
You
vote.
can remain for the vote. Once the nominee is...
Once the votes have been tallied and if there's a winner declared. I should also mention that if it's a tied vote, then the two names go into, I don't think we've got an official council hat, but we'll say that we have an official council receptacle of some sort, and the name that's pulled out is the unsuccessful candidate. The one that remains in the aforementioned receptacle is the successful candidate. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 votes, so there could be a tie. That's how a tiebreak is adjudicated. Is that the hat?
That's the hat.
I can't vote for you, can I? Just quickly.
Better be a donkey vote.
Thanks, Twig.
You'll get it
No, you cannot vote for you. Just let it go, Deputy.
A donkey vote or a vote for a donkey?
Yeah, CEO. CEO.
Well, I'm sorry, well, I've got the name tag.
Is that any way to, even though he's
Hey,
very,
you
very
don't get, you know.
casually dressed tonight.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I wasn't running for deputy.
That's what you choose. That's that very often, do you?
Okay, so the vote's been tallied and I'd like to congratulate Councillor Twin on being elected as Deputy Mayor. So now we are going to add Twin's name in here and we will resume formal meeting procedures, and now this is when you have your opportunity to declare a conflict of interest and exit stage left. So I would like to declare a conflict of interest. And you won't be taking part of the vote. No worries, if you can just maybe head over to the far corner over there. Okay, do I have a mover? So we've got Councillor Trindlewin to the position of Deputy Mayor for a period of 1 year concluding November 2025. There's also the report to receive and note. Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to support that, to two parts to that recommendation, and that it be for a period of 1 year.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I just think, thank both councillors for putting their hand up, and I'm sure it won't diminish. They're both very hard workers for council. But I think it's just an opportunity perhaps for somebody such as a new person coming on, and an opportunity to gain experience, and it's for 1 year, and then there's no opportunity after that. Somebody else wishes to stand. So, I was deputy mayor once, and so it was really I think, an interesting position. It's sort of like you have a little bit of power, but not the whole power of being mayor. But certainly, somebody that will. I know the cabinet's got to done our city proud. So I think that's about all I need to say.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Mark.
Well, it's probably the last thing I get to do as Deputy Mayor, I think, so that's...
Actually, that is true.
It is, yeah. So I've got 5 minutes, right?
Up to 5 minutes.
Up to 5, yeah, okay. No, look, I will just also congratulate Councillor Nguyen for being nominated. Thank Councillor Nelson for putting his hand up. I think it is always good to have more than one option in these things, except when I'm nominating. It's always good to have only one at those occasions, but there's another year to go as well, so I think that's also provides an opportunity for others to put their hand up. It is a really good role to have. I think Councillor Barnett kind of hit the nail on the head. It's got a little bit of power, but not much, but you certainly do get to contribute in some other ways that you don't normally do as a councillor. I've had 7 years as Deputy Mayor in my last 14, so I'm I think I've had my turn, and very pleased to see someone else take up the mantle, and wish Councillor Nguyen all the very best.
Thank you. Current Deputy Mayor Mark.
That's my last comment as a Deputy Mayor. It's still sad, isn't it? I want to keep talking.
You've still got 2.5 minutes.
Oh, right. It's a big night.
Any further discussion, any points that haven't been raised around the table people would like to make mention of? From the chair, sorry, was that nothing? I would like to thank the current Deputy Mayor Mark Groot for his service and hard work and support, particularly in the last 2 years in my role as Mayor. We all know that I didn't have a very smooth path for the first 6 months or thereabouts, well, for a couple of months. So I appreciate the support there, and also Councillor Nelson for stepping into the Deputy Mayor's role. It's a really important role, and one of the key things you have to do is to make smart comments and wisecracks and those types of things during meetings. And I thank you for all of your point of orders and those types of things like that you've
Can
raised.
I not do that anymore?
Well, they won't have as much gravitas.
I would have nominated if I'd known that.
They won't have as much gravitas, mate, that's what I can say. So appreciate that, and look forward to working with Councillor Nguyen in this role over the next 12 months. I'll now circle back to Councillor Barnett to sum up.
Yes, I thought it was remiss of me not to give a sincere vote of thanks to Councillor Mark Groot for his very strong service in the role, and I think that we've got some good examples, such as Councillor Groot, and I'm sure he would, maybe along with the Mayor, be of great assistance to Councillor Nguyen in stepping into the role as a new person, and hoping to learn a whole lot more about and representing our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. If someone wouldn't mind having the Deputy Mayor.
Oh, don't say that. Oh, you have to say that. It's all sad. Yes, now. Yeah.
Now.
I know, it's brutal.
Fire.
I know. Yeah,
Fire.
exactly right.
Yesterday's news.
I'll call you Trump.
Welcome welcome back Deputy Mayor Trin Nguyen. Actually, now I can just say Deputy Mayor Nguyen as opposed to Councillor. That's going to be a lot easier for me, so that's good. All right, let's move on to item 10.2, Audit and Risk Committee Council Member Representative. There's a recommendation on page 8. We're looking to appoint someone for a period of 1 year to the Audit and Risk Committee. So I sit on the Audit and Risk Committee, and there's 3 or 4, 1, 2, 3 independents. And yeah, it's an interesting process to be part of. So I will call for nominations, first of all. Councillor Backer, thank you very much.
I'd like to nominate.
Nominate yourself, I assume. Are there any further nominations for this position? If not, I'll add your name in here, and there is no reason to suspend meeting procedures. We can move simply to moving and seconding. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, certainly move and thank Councillor Back for nominating.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen.
Thank you, Councillor Tobacco, for putting your hand up. And you've done it in the past, and you've done a great good job at it. So thank you very much for putting your hand up again.
Any further discussion? Any points that haven't been raised? If not, I'll head back to the mover for summing up.
No, no need to. I don't think.
Thank you very much. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Congratulations, Councillor Backer. Item 10.3, this is a long one. CEO, Performance Development Review Committee, Council Member Representatives. We're looking for 2, 3, 4 people for a period of 2 years. So I sit on that committee as well. So it's the 5 of us. Calling for nominations. We have 1 here. We have 1 here. Sorry. Start again. Calling for nominations. 1, 2, 3, 4. You as well, Deputy Mayor? All right, so if we only have 4, then do we have 5 or 4?
I did want to, but if there's 4 already, that's fine.
We
Let them go to vote.
The vote's fine.
If you want to do it, yeah.
Great, all right, so we have 5 nominations.
Mr. Mayor, if there's a ballot, I might step out of this one.
Sure, yep. So we're looking for, I'm going to...
I'll withdraw my nomination.
Okay.
No point in the vote.
I hope I wasn't influencing that.
Welcome back, Chris.
Okay, so we have Councillor Tweed Nguyen, Councillor Lillian Hollett, Councillor Mark Groot, Councillor Jason Nelson. As there's only 4 nominations, we do not need to hold a ballot, so could I please have a mover for this motion? Councillor Mark Groot.
I don't need to speak it, no.
Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor De Backer.
Second it. Yeah, look, it's a really great committee. I've been on it before, and I think it's good. It's a bit of consistency on it as well. Yeah, thank you for the new people sticking your hands up.
Any further discussion, any points that haven't been raised? From the chair, it is a good committee to be on. It's interesting to get to review it at that level. It's well run by the current person who runs it, Richard, and period 2 years. So it's probably no real need to sum up. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, on to the next one. Item 10.4, Strategic Planning, Development and Policy Committee, Council Member Representatives. So we are looking for, again, 4 people to jump onto this committee for a period of 2 years. I have Councillor De Backer, Councillor Barnett, Deputy Mayor Trin Nguyen. Any further nominations? Councillor Nelson, any further nominations? So we have just give Waiting for Chancellor for those.
It's Trin.
It's Trin to win.
Councillor
Councillor Christina Barnett.
Yes.
We just changed Councillor to Deputy Mayor. All right, we have 4 nominations. If there's no further nominations, there's no need to put it to a ballot. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brett. Do I have a seconder? I saw Councillor Lee. Would you like to speak to the motion? Any further discussion? Any points that haven't been raised? If not, I'll
Points that have been
to
raised.
sorry,
No, sorry.
Councillor Group to
So subbed.
so subbed. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That's also an interesting committee to be on. Last one is the Council Assessment Panel, Council Member Representative. So we're looking for someone to fill this position for 2 years. We're also looking for a Deputy Council Member. We don't need by law to have a Deputy Council Member, but it's good practice if the Council Member cannot attend to have that backup. Call for nominations.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Can I
ask a question through the chair?
Yep.
Possibly
just in regards to the council assessment panel and the amount of jobs and type of jobs coming through, because I understand it's a kind of different dynamic than it was a couple of years ago. Yeah, so but yeah, it's just regarding the role itself. That's a question.
So your question to Mr McCluskey is, could he give a brief rundown, appraising of the role as it currently stands, just to help someone who might be considering nominating to get a clear picture?
Mr McCluskey, are you able to answer that question?
Through the Chair, and thank you, CEO. It's a very good reflection, Councillor De Backer, that the panel prior to the implementation of the Planning Development Infrastructure Act was largely seeing developments of corridor zone developments, so 2 to 4-storey buildings. Since the implementation of that Act, the panel's role is to review essentially representations and applications that attract representations. Notification, typically in this council, is triggered by something being built on the boundary, and that's most commonly things like a house addition, if we receive a representation that being presented to the panel. Now, certainly there have been times that those urban corridor zones have triggered notification and been presented here, but that is no longer the bulk majority of work performed by this panel.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you for that. It's a little bit of context to the role. Are there any nominations for this position? Councillor Barnett.
I will nominate. I wasn't going to, but it's, the manager has convinced me it's not as what it used to be.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further nominations for the council member representative position? I'll take that we have 1 nomination, no need for a vote there. Point 3 is calling for a nomination for Deputy Council Member. I'm sure Councillor Barnett will do her utmost to attend the majority of meetings, but there might be an opportunity. And what an opportunity it is to get it on the ground floor in this much sought after committee position. So I'm like a real estate agent. So as I mentioned, we don't have to have one, but it would be good to have a backup. I think you get free tea and coffee, snacks, trying to make it sound more interesting.
Can I just ask a question, Mayor? Is the deputy member bound by the same rules of not confidentiality, of conflict, even if they don't attend any meetings?
It sounds like the answer might be yes, but we'll just get a confirmation.
Mr McCluskey, can you speak to the Code of Conduct's application to the deputy member should one be appointed?
Through the Chair, and thank you, CEO, that the Code of Conduct places a positive obligation on the member to avoid giving rise to a conflict of interest. So in the strictest sense, yes, if you are a deputy member, you may not attend any meeting, but still be bound by the same provisions to not speak to people as if you were attending each meeting.
All right, so I take it we have no nominations, so that position remains unfilled, and we'll just remove that from the recommendation. Such we have two parts to the recommendation. Do I have a mover? Councillor Groot.
Congratulations, Councillor Barnett. Good luck.
Thank you. That's succinct. Moving.
Well, I said something.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, I will do this one because congratulations, Councillor Barnett, on this one. Obviously, I've spent the last 2 years on it. There's obviously a number of councils around that have removed the elected member from the panel. I think it's a wasted opportunity. As much as we don't have a lot of say because it's all about the Planning Act and it's about what happens, and you have the state planners there and everything else, but we have actually had some really good impact when you put a good case forward. I'm sure you've sat on the panel before. We've had some really good influence on some of the matters that really affect the public. And when you can get the other committee members on the same page, we've actually had some really positive results. So I wish you all the best on that role. I was going to put my hand up again if no one else did, but I'm certainly glad that you did. So good luck with that.
I think we'll be having a few coffees.
Any further discussion, any points that haven't been raised that people would like to take the opportunity to raise? All quiet there, so I'll now head back to Councillor Groot to sum up. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Yeah. All those against, carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Councillor Barnett. There's a bit of work involved in the committee, but as Councillor Nelson mentioned, it's really important that we have the view of the community at the table there, and I'm sure you will do a great job of that.
Yes, I think I'm reasonably familiar with it, but there's always something new to learn.
Moving on, item 10.6, Council Assessment Panel, resignation of presiding member. Two parts to the recommendation, which is on page 20. Is this the one where we had to determine whether we wanted to recruit again now or put an interim position in and recruit in March?
Missing in the recommendation.
Yeah. Should that be part 3 of the recommendation?
Mr McCluskey, my understanding is if they pass the recommendation, that is essentially a move to not fill the role in the short term. Is that correct?
Through the Chair, and thanks, CEO, I'll add a tiny bit to my answer there. If we don't appoint now, the Deputy Independent Member will be called into the panel on a consistent basis until we have a new appointment, and the panel itself will determine who the acting presiding member is in accordance with the meeting procedures for the panel.
But if I can ask you to expand upon that, the recommendation that's currently on the screen would achieve that outcome. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, Mr Mayor, the fact that no process is put in place to replace Ms Pascal is essentially a vote, should Council support the recommendation, to proceed on the basis that Mr McCluskey just outlined. Leave the position vacant until March.
Alright, so if we're voting for this, then that's what we're voting for. If you've got a problem with that, then you can move an amendment if you like.
Just a question more than anything.
Yep.
Just as far as the risk profile, and obviously availability, if we don't then have an additional deputy chair, it leaves us open if there's a conflict or someone's not available. So maybe I'm just wondering if the administration looked into the risk of doing this versus maybe hiring.
I'll hand that question to the CEO, but I believe I read that the deputy has said that they will make themselves available for all meetings up until March, which to me sounds like a reasonable. Of course, you can't help being sick and those types of things like that.
It's just
There,
conflicted.
what would happen if the deputy wasn't available? Then the committee would appoint another person to be the chair for that meeting.
Mr. McCluskey, in the event that a member can't attend, including the deputy, under those circumstances, would meetings proceed in the absence of a quorum, or is there a quorum requirement? Can you explain what would happen under those circumstances?
Through the Chair, and thank you, CEO. So the quorum for the assessment panel is 3 members. As present, if this motion were to proceed, there would be 5 appointed members, including the deputy member that would be present at each meeting. The deputy member exclusively works within local government, meaning he has a low number of conflicts of interest in undertaking work for the city. And I expect that the difference in the recruitment process is in the order of 2 meetings of the panel. So we're talking something like 3 to 4 items difference between recruiting now or recruiting later. So in my view, the risk is low.
I concur with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Question.
Question from Councillor.
So I would assume from the explanations that we will be starting the selection process at any rate, so there won't be any loss of perhaps time within the time frame of what would be the next 2 meetings, that the council staff will be starting the recruitment process. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Mr. McCluskey, can you outline your plans and timeline for the recruitment process for Ms. Pascal's replacement?
Through the Chair, I expect to bring a report to the January council meeting to produce a selection panel of elected members to assist in appointing suitable independent members to the vacant roles in the assessment panel. With the view then that the interview process is accompanying that recruitment will occur in February, allowing those appointments to take place at either the February or March council meeting in readiness for the first CAP meeting in April.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, I'll call for a mover. Councillor Group.
Look, I think it's a sensible way forward. I support the motion.
Do I have a seconder? Sorry, I saw Councillor Nelson saying that. Best, so Councillor Nelson. Further speech to the motion.
No, that's good.
Any further discussion? We had a couple of questions. There might be another point someone would like to make. If not, I'll head back to Councillor Group to sum up.
So summed.
Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 6. 10.7 Maynooth Road, Pocket Park naming update. Recommendations on page 23. Do I have a mover, Councillor?
Yeah, I'd like to move a slightly changed motion.
I think we've got some words. Have we got your changed words on the screen?
No, so basically what I'd like to do is change it just to a single name. Look at the
Sorry, can I just ask as a point of order?
Yeah.
Does that not need to be moved and seconded and amended?
I don't believe so. I think we can incorporate and change to the motion at this point in time. Bill?
I might, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there's a norm, it's not a rule here, but it's been a norm, and certainly it's been introduced to me as such by a number of members, that the recommendation is always offered to the chamber as the first option to move. Now that's not a mandatory rule, but it has been a norm here, and obviously it's within your remit to either continue or not continue that under any individual circumstance. But ordinarily, it has been a practice here that the chair offers the recommendation to the chamber first to move. However, that is not mandatory, and it's certainly within your discretion to change process either in any individual circumstance or more generally.
So if I weren't to allow this change from at this point in time, then we would be looking at an amendment.
And you can do it.
So the alternative would be to offer the recommendation to the chamber, and if there was a mover and someone moved that and introduced and spoke to it,
Then we need a seconder, and then if Councillor Vac was of a mind to
she could
move
amend
an
it.
amendment, then we
Yeah,
would
that's
need
fine.
it.
And
Sorry,
then if it was
about the confusion.
yes.
That's okay. So you're not going to move this one?
Not as it's written in the agenda. No.
Okay. So I'm looking for a mover for this motion as it appears in the agenda, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I'll move it as is. And I think there's been quite a good lot of explanation for perhaps, well, a smaller amount of information about the Ghana name, and a bit more information, mainly from me, if I'm allowed to say that, on the research that I did for the Da Costa Park. The member of Adelaide, Member of Parliament Lucy Hood, has concurred with the dual naming. We've only had dissension from the Aboriginal naming kayak by 2 to 1. Now, I point that out, that changes what I believe is our dual naming policy. We haven't had a dissension brought to council from kayak, I understand. And so I have a question about, is that, if it's only the one Ghana name chosen, then does that conflict with our dual naming policy?
CEO.
Honestly, Mr Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor. There'd be arguments either way. Ms Taylor, could you assist?
My understanding, through the chair, is we don't have a dual naming policy.
Well, we've had a standing practice of having one, through the chair. So I do know that we have a dual naming policy, but what parks it refers to, I can't be sure. Right, I'll continue anyway, because yeah, I think it, I mean, if it's going to be a cause of dissension and we only do have the one name, then I understand it could lead further discussion in the community about it. I don't know whether the objection to calling it Da Costa Park is because it's like we've had some discussion, somebody remarked about it being a colonial name. We should just be having our Ghana names. I think if you have the dual names, you have the best of both options. If people just want to call it New County Junta, like we do here, that's fine. If others want to refer it to Da Costa Park, as was pointed out in the report, it's a geographical reference with it being right alongside Da Costa Avenue. So there are most probably arguments either way, but I'll just put it up as it has come to us, to council, with the information from the report.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a second, Councillor Greg?
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to second it. In fact, I was willing to move it as well. And I'm really interested in the foreshadowed amendment because I think it's going to be a very interesting debate point that I'm really interested in, given that I was very supportive of having this building not dual named. So I may contradict myself in the next 20 minutes. First of all, thank you to the staff for bringing a dual name. I think to Councillor Barnett's point, it's probably not a policy, but it's certainly standard practice that we've used for many, many years to dual name most things in the city, but particularly parks. I was really taken by the work of Louisa Da Costa when I looked into her a little bit more and what she'd done in the community. So I think this is a nice nod to certainly her contribution to the city of Prospect and more broadly. I'm a bit troubled though by the 2-1 voting, and I just had one question through the Mayor. In terms of Bayanthi Kamanka, how many members are actually on that group, noting that only 3 voted? What's the full complement of that?
So, through you, Mr Mayor, there's 6 Ghana members ordinarily present on the committee, so
Yep.
it was essentially a minimum quorum of Ghana members present with the 3.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. And so it's disappointing we didn't have 6 people voting, but I understand that's not always possible to have a member at every meeting at every time. So I do sit here being somewhat concerned that we go against some of the advice that was provided to us. But I think it is a, if not a policy, certainly a practice of council to dual name. But I'm really interested in what Councillor Baker's opening to us in terms of the value in having one name, which I'll listen to and be very open to. But otherwise, I'm very supportive of what's before us at the moment.
Thank you, Deputy Former Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I have a point of order in that it's not correct to say that the it was the council's Painthy Kumanga group. Was that the panel that actually discussed it? Because I don't remember it. Or was it the Garta or the kayak that named it?
That was in the report, wasn't it?
Well,
And the report
I'm just asking for a point of order to rule on it.
Sorry, so we're wanting to determine whether it was the Garta Yurta Aboriginal Corporation or the PK Advisory Group who voted 2-1 against the dual name.
Yes.
Could I get a clarification?
So I'm going to ask Ms Taylor in a moment, but I was at this meeting. I remember the discussion, and my recollection, Council, was that you might not have been present for that one. Ms Taylor, can you confirm?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. It was discussed at the Painthy Kumanga STEP advisory group. There was only the 3 representatives there, and one of the quorum requirements is that there is a kayak representative as part of that. There was a kayak board member representative, and they were one representative.
Right, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so thank you for the question, Councillor Barnett and Councillor Groot. Thank you for seconding. Councillor,
I'd like to move an amendment.
I might take Councillor back first if that's okay. Yep.
So I guess I get to speak to it, so 5 minutes. Do I have to get a seconder first, or?
You can speak to it and then we'll see if we get a seconder.
Yeah, okay, all right. So, look, thank you for indulging me, and sorry about the confusion about the initial thing. Yeah, so look, this came to us, and I was really interested, and similarly, really interested in the history of the DaCostas, and got onto Trove and had a little look around, and I think it was Benjamin Mendez DaCosta came here, and his sister was Louisa, and I think Benjamin was here. He was a merchant, made his money here, and he actually went back to England after 7 years, which was quite interesting. Yeah, so, and I think DaCosta are represented in the city of Prospect. They've got, obviously, DaCosta in the central village, but you'd also would have heard of the DaCosta building in Grenfell Street. There's DaCosta Park in Glenelg. There's also a DaCosta Memorial in Northern Territory, where I think they donated money. So they're well recognised, certainly. But I guess with a lot of the dual naming that we've got in the city of Prospect actually originates because we name things after, tends to be older men, shall we say. For example, Charles Kane Reserve, who was actually the CEO of the council for a good 50 years. So, but we've changed our naming policy, sorry, Chris. So often what was happening with the dual naming is we'd have an existing, you can say colonial name or, anglicised name. And then obviously with recognition and Ghana recognition, we would do a dual naming, and I think that's appropriate. However, in this case, we've actually got a new park that's owned by the state, and there just doesn't seem to be a need to be, another name. Now, some might say, well, it's difficult to pronounce, and people will just say DaCosta Park, and I think that's not a really good excuse for having an anglicised name. I think, learning Ghana names and having a Ghana name, a bit like this building here, which is called Painthy, and that's how I never pronounce it right, Painthy. And this is the thing. So in things being non-familiar, I think part of it's a learning process for our community as well. And certainly having the pronunciation phonetically spelled would certainly help me for some things, because, till I get the gist of it. But I think this is a really good opportunity for us to have a single name. So though we've had dual naming, I think it's because there's been an existing anglicised name, and then we sought to, recommendations from our steering group. And I think I'd just go back to that point as well. In the report, it's relevant to note that the Council's Painthy Kumanga group unanimously supported the naming of the main North Road Pocket Park. Now, Mukansi Yurnta, I'm hoping I'm getting that right. However, Ghana members of the group were split on the question of dual naming, with the majority of members present opposed to dual naming. So I'm swayed by this expert vote, and I would hate to override that. So I'd hope others would support me in that single naming, but again, it's up to other elected members present.
Thank you, Councillor De Backer. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Wynne would like to speak to.
Originally I was in support of the dual naming. I mean, it's something that we've done. We don't have a policy, but it's been practice of ours that we give parks and buildings dual naming. But I'm very interested in Councillor De Backer's speech in terms of like with this building itself. It's not dual name, and initially we came to when we had to vote for it, it was like we had to make that decision. I'd like us to make that decision again and just call it an excuse. I would actually want to say, how do you pronounce this name? Can we get it? Can we get the proper pronunciation of this name of this park first of all, so that we can pronounce it all correctly?
The park.
The park.
I'm not an expert at that. Who wants to have a crack at correct pronunciation?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. So I thought that was really important, and that was one of my first questions. Okay, how do we pronounce this right? And we want to learn how to say it right. So, like I said, initially I was really supportive of the dual name, but I think after Councillor De Backer's speech, I would be supporting the one name, and if administration can get back to us with the correct pronunciation, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. Do we offer discussion opportunities, or we just no? We don't for a minute, do we? So we're now going to call for a vote on the amendment. If we vote in favour of the amendment, then that's the motion that we are voting on. If we do not get a vote in favour of the amendment, then we revert to the original motion, and we've had 2 speakers, and so there's still a few other people that can speak. So all those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? So the amendment is lost, which means we're reverting back to the original recommendation. And we've had discussion from Councillor Barnett, Councillor Groot. The movement and seconder of the amendment count as having spoken? No. Okay, so anyone else is free to talk to this motion if there's any further discussion. Councillor Nelson.
Just one point, when I was reading this motion through on the weekend, it actually made me think of Uncle Tamaroo and the same speech that he gives. And he always brings someone up on stage and he says, we don't want to walk behind you, we don't want to walk in front of you, we want to walk beside you. That's exactly what this naming motion does. Not one's better than the other. This is a dual naming that puts us as equals. It puts everything as equal, puts everything on the same par. So I think this motion should be passed as it sits.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, so I was originally for the dual name as well, but to Councillor De Backer's point, we do have a committee that are also that we can involve and come to them for advice. And I think it is a bit disappointing if we're coming to them for advice and not really sticking to the advice that has been given to us. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll circle back to Councillor Barnett for the summary.
Oh, thank you. Yes, some interesting points have been made, and I think before I go any further, in Part 3 Gazette, just typo. Thank you. So we get it correct. Yeah, so I think it was just, I really didn't know too much about the costas, but if I had another, more time to think about it, I most probably would have asked that to be asked if one of the dual names be the Louisa da Costa Park, because I think for me, that goes to the very nub of why I thought that it was worthwhile bringing up and supporting at council. Again, because we most probably have more recognition these days, and thank goodness too, more recognition of our Ghana names with our dual names than we do with a lot of women in our city. I'm very hard pressed to find one single thing named after a woman in this city. So I think that's something else that we need to look at. And it doesn't matter what cultural background that the woman might be, but I just think that's something that I would like us also to look at. So in this instance, I would like to commend the motion to us, and then I think we maybe need to also have a think about a naming policy in the city if it's going to come and cause problems like this particular motion has. So that's what I would like to see happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Let's bridge the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.8, General Purpose Financial Statements for the year ended 30th June 2024. Recommendations on page 31. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, happy to speak to it. Obviously a very good result in the end. Unfortunately, obviously delays in works. We failed to reach our asset renewal target. Clearly the CEO assures us we'll catch up on this financial year. So very happy to support the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group.
Nothing further to add to what Councillor Nelson said.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any points that haven't been raised? If not, Councillor Nelson, would you like to sum up?
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10.9, periodic review of key financial indicators and 2024-2025 annual business plan and budget parameters. Recommendations on page 112. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, happy to move. I think we've had this discussion about 12 months ago, as I do still have concerns that we're setting a target that we know we're not going to meet. I just have a philosophical issue with that with regards to our net financial liabilities. We know we're not going to be under 90% for the next 3 years. The fact that that one's for an individual year, my feeling is that we should still set that to where we're actually going to be rather than setting ourselves up to fail. Understand the reason behind it, but you know, obviously we're undertaking the PLP will always be above that 90%. But again, understand the reasons why, but happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group.
What Councillor Nelson said.
Any further discussion? Just briefly from the chair, I take on board your point, Councillor Nelson. That point was raised at the Audit and Risk Committee and discussed roundly, and if I would be more inclined to continue to push on that point with you if the Audit and Risk Committee had identified a serious concern, but they seemed comfortable with it. So it's a point well made, but yeah, I'm happy with their position on that. Councillor Nelson, would you like to sum up?
So summed.
So summed. Okay, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour?
So I just got a cramp in my leg, so.
Do you let us stand? I think you have to be sitting in your seat to vote, Councillor Group. Well, in the meeting procedures, motion coming up.
Yeah, change that.
I just have to hold on to that cramp.
You can stand up now.
No, that's all right. Lay on the table.
Suspension of standing orders.
That's right.
I'm not going to suspend meeting procedures so you can stretch out a hamstring. Sorry. Item 10.10, Code of Practice, Meeting Procedures. Recommendations on page 119. There is an opportunity there to add in any amendments if people are that way inclined to put forward an amendment. We don't have to make amendments, and the staff is authorised to make minor administrative edits. Let's ask for a mover.
So, point of order, I have two small amendments. Do you want to hear them now or later?
Are these
amendments to the actual document?
No, let's get them on the table now.
Okay. So I just had two, and apologies, I wasn't here for the workshop for this particular one, so I don't have that foresight. One is in relation to divisions. Fancy me raising that. So many years ago, council changed the division rule to stand in the negative, and that was done at the time that maybe only one other person was there for a very specific purpose. And I just wonder why we still sit outside the sort of standard division rules, and whether we could just do it as per the normal code of practice in inverted commas. I'm not sure if there's a particular reason why we have maintained this standard, if it's a no.
Probably just we changed it at some point in time for a particular reason, and we never
Change it back.
saw a reason to change it back.
I just think the more we're consistent with other councils, the better, unless there's a reason not to be.
So that's a question. I think.
Put it as a question.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I might ask for Mr. Medro to provide some input on this, but the only other South Australian council I have experience with does the same thing. Mr. Medro, if you could maybe expand on your experience in this regard.
Yes, through the chair. It is an anomaly that we have it this way, in the negative. It has remained in at this point just because it was in the previous one, and during our discussions and the workshop that we held, it was not raised as an issue for anybody. So it's just a matter for council. We can very easily take it out if you would prefer to revert to the actual regulations and what is written in the regulations. There's no particular reason that it has been included other than that it was in the previous version.
So on that basis, I'd probably move that way. Need be to actually revert it. I think the closer we are to the regulations, the better.
So can we take recommend suggestions for amendments now? Mel, or do we need to? It looks like we can take them now by my reading. So, do you have some words for us, Councillor Greg?
Remove variation under section 17.
Thank you.
And I have one
You
other,
mentioned you had two?
Yeah, I have one other one, sorry. The other one relates to section 19, adjourned business. This is another one where I don't know the history of why we do this a little bit differently to the regulations. And again, there may be a good reason why we do. But we, now what's the difference? The debate rule on retention recommences if the item has not yet been considered, which I think that is contrary to the regulation, if I'm correct. And I'm just not sure why we do that. It has caused confusion in the past. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened in the past and caused some confusion because we're not consistent with the regs. But maybe could I ask why that might be in our procedures, if anyone can remember? I certainly can't.
I can't.
I wasn't here when it happened. I think it was Ms. Medro, so we probably can't comment.
Could I ask it a different way? Is there any reason why we have that variation and why we could revert back to the regs?
To mind, Ms. Medro, can you think of a reason which might support the current practice?
Through the chair, as with the previous one, it's there because it has been in the past. I think it, again, as the CEO says, I wasn't here, but the most logical reason that it would be there is that if two people have spoken to an issue and then we walk away and we come back a month later, those two people still can't speak. So it's looking at the item fresh, but again, it's a decision for council to take on board. And again, as with the divisions, it's very easy to remove should you wish to. As I say, it's only there because it was there previously.
So I feel less passionate about this one, to be honest with you, but I just it was more a question, why is it just the question was why do we have it different? And if it's because we all get to speak then the second time round, then that might be a good reason to leave it. So I won't, if anyone else wants to prosecute that one, happy for them too, but maybe I'll leave that second one. Okay. But I'll just put section 17 up as an option. Yep.
Okay, would anyone else like to suggest any amendments at this point in time? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, just around questions, because I tend to have a few. There seems to be different service levels for questions generally from council members, that's on page 130, compared to questions from the public. So basically, if you have a question without notice, if it's from the public, and it's taken on notice, it's resolved that is answered in the minutes of the next council meeting, I think. Whereas I don't know if the same is true for council questions. So if you look at public question time.
Mr. Mayor, there's a fairly clear reason I can see why that would be the case.
Yeah.
And that's because of two reasons. Firstly, for members asking questions often, as you kindly do, a councillor, we tend to have a little bit of notice at least that it's coming, and there's far more chance then for staff to answer it on the floor and actually provide you with a response rather than taking everything on notice and then putting it through the next meeting minutes. It's simply recognising the difference, the very different nature between the two questions.
But I think it's maybe making that explicit. You know, just sort of say that council's taken on notice will be provided through the system or whatever. So basically it becomes a portal entry.
Well, I think then there's another question there potentially for you, and that would mean that a question taken on notice would then a member would need to wait procedurally for the publishing of the minutes, rather than, let's say, the following day or a nearer term option, as members would be accustomed that we can deliver because we have your email addresses and phone numbers, whereas often with questions to the public we don't have the benefit of that information.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Becker. If there's no further, we can always have more questions and comments later on. What I'm looking for now specifically are any amendments there. So if you've got an amendment you'd like to put forward, then let's do that now. If it's a question or you'd like to speak to the motion, let's wait till we move it. So I'll take that, but there's no further amendments. So let's call for a mover to the motion that we see on the screen, which has got one suggested amendment. A mover, Councillor Green.
I'm happy to move that way. Thank you for bringing this to us, because I think it is good that we look at these move procedures from time to time and not be too steeped in the history of what we've done in the past, but kind of look at it afresh. So I support the motion. I support the amended code of practice as well.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, I saw Councillor Barnett.
Yes.
You had a question as well, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I could get that day. Yes, I think we had reasonable discussion at the workshop, but some may not have been there for that, so I think it's a good opportunity here. Now, I did have a question about particularly like in Rule 15, Part 2, a member may, with the leave of the meeting, raise a matter of urgency. Do we have a definition of what a matter of urgency is? Because there have been some times with with the mayoral who remain, I won't name names, but declared something urgent, and yet it's proved to be difficult and proved to be against policy and blah blah blah. So I would like to know if there's a definition of matter of urgency.
I happen to have one right next to me, which I'm happy to read out. Thank you, Mel. So urgent motions without notice. This item enables members to raise a motion without notice regarding a matter of genuinely urgent nature. If the Mayor determines that the matter is of sufficient urgency, leave of the meeting will be sought to enable the member raising the matter to proceed with the motion without notice. I think typically what we've decided, so it's clear that the Mayor decides whether it's urgent or not, and typically one of the better definitions for this that I've heard is that if the matter can't wait until the next meeting, if it needs to or should be resolved between now and the next meeting, then it can be taken as an urgent item. However, if the matter could wait until the next meeting, then the elected member is encouraged to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So that would be my informal definition, and that's a reasonably good formal definition.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess we stick to that as a working proposition.
Yes,
it's not really quite clear enough for me. Yeah, because I think I remember instances, maybe even back when I was mayor, I don't know, but you would have instances whereby, like particularly with grants or something came up, and so another group would be given sort of money, and yet, that was sort of seemingly going against the council policy, going against recommendation from the officer, so they're just some things that I get a bit concerned about from time to time. we make policy on the run, even though it's deemed to be urgent. So
You could think about putting forward a motion to the next meeting, requesting some more detailed definition around urgent items. But my feeling is that they're on a case by case, so we may never sort of reach a definition that we're entirely happy with.
Right.
Now you're happy to move that motion, Councillor Barnett?
Yes.
And you would like to speak to the motion?
I think
She
that's good
seconded.
enough.
Sorry?
She seconded, didn't she?
She asked a
Yes.
question, she
Oh,
seconded
sorry.
it, and she hasn't spoken yet,
Sorry.
so.
Yeah, I haven't run out of time.
I think
but
we moved
I
it.
won't dilly-dally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion? Any points that anyone would like to raise that haven't been raised yet? If not, I'll head back to Councillor Group to sum up.
Just thank you again to the staff for the effort put into this one. It's a lot of work involved with this, and hopefully this will see us through for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously.
Division? No, I'm joking.
Okay, so general business of an urgent item.
Dog and cat management. Mr. Mayor, 1011.
Oh, sorry, I've got the page the wrong way around. All right, so sorry about that. Item 1011, nomination for Dog and Cat Management Board, recommendation on page 147, and we have received a nomination from Ms Farley Taylor, and there was some information distributed regarding Farley's credentials. So can I have a mover for this motion, please? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think we've received the more detailed information about the nomination that Ms Taylor put forward, and I think quite eminently fulfils the criteria that was put. I know that some of us sent a lot of yes dogs and yes cats images, but I won't go there with this. It's a serious matter, so I support the nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Nguyen, would like to speak to the motion.
Yes, I'd like to support Ms Taylor in this. She did say that she was happy for a council member, but I feel like she's got experience in this body.
Any further discussion on this item? Any points that haven't been raised? People would like to raise. If not, I'll head back to Councillor Barnett for a summary. Thanks very much. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Someone wouldn't mind catching Farley, that'd be great. Congratulations. So we're up to item 11, general business of an urgent nature. Just one further note to the previous discussion. In our agenda it says that as long as it's not a change to policy and cannot wait until the next council meeting. Another slightly further definition in the agenda, so I think they're good ones to note. Are there any urgent items that people wish to raise? Councillor Group.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologies for doing this on the run to a degree, but I'm just troubled a bit by something excuse me, that Councillor Barnett said before, and I think it's a really valid point. It's around the dual naming of the park, and I'm probably seeking maybe some advice here. I think the point about calling it DaCosta and not Louisa DaCosta is actually a really, really good point, because we don't have any parks named, or don't have anything named after females in the city. And I think the reference to Charles Kane's a really good example about how we do there. And I'll be correct if I'm wrong in that, but just copy what, or reflecting what Councillor Barnett said. I just wonder if an urgent item could be that we have somebody come back to us to suggest Louisa DaCosta rather than DaCosta. I'm seeking some process advice on this. Unfortunately, Councillor Barnett raised it in her closing speech, so I couldn't do anything at that point. Yeah, but I think it's a really, really good point. A really good point. Because, I mean, as Councillor DeBacker said, the DaCosta like you talked about the mail to Costa, I can't remember his name, Benjamin, and people might go straight to him rather than to Louisa when it's actually about Louisa.
The nature of the motion, if we just said, would we have to go back to the people we asked previously and say, would you be listening to this?
So, Mr. Mayor, as I see it, that's two separate questions. The first question is, were council minded to revisit the decision you have made and maybe amend it? What would the process be? I think that's the first question. Ms. Meadrow and I agree that it would require a rescission motion. Ms. Meadrow, could you explain the process, given that members have voted on and we've moved since moved on from that item, how council might go about amending that decision somehow?
Yes, so through the Mayor, what we would need to do is someone from the floor could move a rescission. We could do this at another meeting, or we could do it straight away. It would need to be approved by the Mayor and then seek leave of the meeting to accept the urgent motion, which would be the rescission. We would then need a seconder, rescind the motion, and then someone could move effectively the same motion, but with the inclusion of the Louisa name. So it is a little bit procedural. It is possible to do it, but because it has been moved, seconded and carried, we can't change the existing motion. We would need to rescind and then re-resolve.
So Mr. Mayor, former deputy, sorry, council agreed. That is the procedural question. The second part of that question, which as I understood it, the Mayor asked, is assuming we could overcome that procedural step, which we can, would it be possible then for council, given the information it has before it and the position in terms of consultation and our engagement with DIT, giving us their part, could that feasibly be achieved? That's a question I'd have to pose to Mr. Delena or Ms. Taylor, given their expertise, because I'm not certain whether it could. Mr. Delena, could you assist in that regard?
Through the Chair, through the Mayor, in regards to the naming of Louisa da Costa, in the correspondence that we've had with the Louisa da Costa trustee, it's always been about Da Costa Park. I'm only speculating because I haven't asked them the question specifically in regards to Louisa, but they were certainly very supportive of the use of the Costa name. We didn't specifically ask him Louisa da Costa.
On that basis, could I just maybe foreshadow a potential rescission motion at another meeting? With the administration, see if that's even possible from the trustee, and maybe seek some guidance from members around the table if that is something that would be supported. Because if it's not, I won't put it up. But if there's not confidence to put the name Louisa in tonight, I'm happy for it to wait. I don't think it's time critical in that sense.
Only that, members, you have through you, Mr. Mayor, you've declared the name.
Yeah.
I would imagine a step would then follow to inform all parties of the name, either through the minutes, whether there's a gazettal process involved.
Yeah.
Once that's done, it takes some unwinding.
It's done, yeah. Okay.
So you may instead wish, and I'm not even sure this is possible given time constraints, to rescind tonight and then maybe revisit the item down the track. Mr. Delena?
Through the Chair, that there is no time pressure in respect to this decision. The park's open, moved on, it just needs to be named at some point. So effectively there is not a time prerogative.
There's not a time prerogative, but we were potentially going down the path of only having a single name anyway, so we may have ended up voting on a motion which only had the Garner name and no reference to Da Costa, so I can't see moving a rescission motion and calling for the name to be Louisa da Costa / Garner name. It just depends on whether we're better off going and seeking the Trust's confirmation that they're happy with it first of all, because if they're not, then we're kind of wasting our time. So I would suggest that's our process.
Sorry, just for clarity, can I ask another question? Given the existing approved motion tonight, is there a time requirement for administration to act on that in terms of the gazettal? Because I think that's the question.
The Mayor, we need to give effect to your lawful decisions without delay, Councillor. That's what the legislation provides. So you could tell us to slow walk it, but we kind of have to do what you tell us. We don't get to choose, unfortunately.
No, I just wasn't sure if there's a legislative requirement to do it within 14 days or 20
Well,
days.
without delay is the
term.
terminology.
So there's someone on my left shoulder talking to me. No, it's just a thought in my head. There's another urgent item, sorry, isn't there?
Yeah, there's
Yeah, I would be happy to maybe write something down while we're doing that.
The only problem with that is that I'm going to recommend that we don't address the other urgent item now, that we're going to address the other urgent item at the end of the agenda with the other confidential items.
May I suggest through the Mayor that if this is something you're genuinely concerned about, Councillor, and want to pursue, that you first seek a rescission motion from your fellow councillors. Assuming you get support for that, that might give you a sense
good
of
idea.
how you might then possibly get on with the broader question. And that may or may not then help you determine where you go from there.
Well, I'll move a rescission motion then of item 10.7. And I guess what I'm just thinking out loud here is if people are of the view to include Louisa in the name, they would support the decision motion. If they are not, they wouldn't, and then that would determine how I might go about something later.
So I'm happy to accept that as an urgent item because, as the CEO has pointed out, if we don't do that now, then they're compelled to act on what we've already suggested. So I am happy to consider this an urgent item. Do we have to have the wording for rescission? Not straight away. Okay, so we need to put this to a vote. We're looking for 2/3 of people in favour of accepting that we're going to put forward a rescission motion. And then if we do, then we look at the rescission motion wording, and then we're moving and seconding, discussing, and then voting on. So the first step is a show of hands, all those in favour of accepting a rescission motion. Carried unanimously.
It is a simple motion that says something to the words of that item 10.7, or what was the resolution?
10.7.
Resolution 10.7, comma 26 November 2024 be rescinded.
Yep, that sounds simple to the point.
That. Do we have a second? Who's a second?
We haven't got it. We haven't.
Oh, that was just that it be accepted as for the debate.
No, we need to. So I would take that as councillor group moving that motion to rescind the resolution. So we're now looking for a second. Do I have a? Where's my bell? Ding 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 ding. Do I have a seconder for the motion that you can see on the screen, being that we rescind the resolution? Councillor Barnett, speak to the motion.
I think it's just an opportunity for us to rewrite history, should we might say.
Any discussion on the rescission motion? Seems pretty straightforward, except for Councillor Barnett.
Well, I'm voting for it because I'm sure, you know, I made a whoopsie in a motion that my fellow councillors would assist in a rescission motion. However, it's really uncomfortable, and if the intent is to name after a woman, what is the internal process that we've been through? This is a particular woman and their relevance to prospect. We need a policy around this, and I don't know the internal policy about how the DaCosta name, if this is something that's been forwarded, you know, from a group or as a suggestion of a councillor. So it would be great to see a Ghana woman, for example, or it might be a local business woman, or someone who's, you know, an OIM, or I don't know, but I think it needs some policy.
this is the second naming issue we've had, and this is also a state piece of land. So people watching the video are going, what are we doing? So I'm certainly foreshadowing motion to the next council meeting about getting a policy in order for this, because I think we can't just do it on what we think. There has to be some candidates who are vetted well prior to a meeting and have a policy shaped around it. So though I'll support this, I really want to see a policy around it.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll ask Councillor Margaret to sum up, please.
Look, just to agree with Councillor Backer, I think a policy would help us with this. Just to correct Councillor Backer, this is the fourth naming issue we've had. We had the first lot of Churchill Road, we had this building, we had the second lot of Churchill Road, and now this one. So it probably is, I'm not sure what else we've got left to name, mind you, but it probably is a good opportunity to think about a policy framework for this. But I just think, this is our job. If we find something that's not quite right, we need to fix it, and if we can fix it on the night, that's it.
Thank you. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you for that contribution. So there is another urgent item regarding Broadview Tennis Club funding. However, I'm going to seek leave of the meeting to propose to address this matter alongside the other confidential matters at the end of the meeting. So I'm looking for a show of hands. People who are in favour of accepting that we address it then. All those happy to do so. That's enough, thank you for that. So we'll address that item later on in the agenda. That one. So we're now up to, just let me check. Cool. Reports for information. So there are a number here, and we can vote for any of these on block. There's no debate, we're just looking for a mover and a seconder and a vote. So I'll go through them. If you'd like to pull out one of these motions, please let me know. So item 12.1, Annual Council Resolution Update. Anyone like to pull that one out? 12.2, Annual Review of Confidential Resolutions by Council. Anyone like to pull that one out? Item 3, Audit and Risk Committee Meeting Report to Council. Would anyone like to put that one out? Item 4, Minutes of the CEO PDR Committee meeting held on 12th of November. Would anyone like to pull that one out? Item 12.5, Monthly Mayoral Report. I'd like to pull that one out myself. Item 12.6, Council Activity Update. I'd also like to pull that one out, unless you would like to, Councillor Backer.
I can pull it out,
Pull
that's
that
fine.
back, yeah. No worries. So we've got item 12.1, 12.2, 12.3 and 12.4 that we're voting on block. Mover and a seconder? Mover and a second. Do I have a mover, please? Remembering there's no discussion. Seconder? Councillor Nelson. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.5, Mayoral Monthly Activity Report. I just wanted to note a couple of things. The first one, at the LGA General Meeting on Friday, we voted on the motion that Councillor Backer we supported regarding developing an AI framework, and the vote was around 91% in favour, so there was about 4 or 5 councils who voted against that for whatever reason, but it was well received. On the day there was quite a few motions that were voted 100% in favour of. There were some which were voted against, so 91% was fairly solid support. And in the agenda it did note that several councils had already gone down this path, and the LGA were apparently already actively working on some sort of framework. So it was a good motion, and I think that not all councils would have the resources to put such a framework in place, and this is one of those things that it makes sense for the LGA to take charge in this area. So thank you, Councillor Backer, for putting that forward. The other point that I would like to note also, and I'll see if I get this right, so there was another motion on the agenda which was to ask the LGA to progress the concept of moving the next round of council elections such that it didn't coincide with state or federal elections, which essentially means moving them by a year. So that's not a decision that the LGA can make. They'll have to put it to the state government. But that was voted in favour of reasonably solidly as well, I think, from memory. So that's now sitting with the LGA to progress. If we feel comfortable that the LGA will take carriage of that and progress it actively, then there's nothing else we need to do. But if any councils had a concern around that, then if they felt strongly about that, they could also lobby. But I guess at the moment we leave it in the hands of the LGA. So that were the only two items I wanted to note in my report. Can I have a mover, please? Oh, sorry, I saw Deputy Wynne and a seconder, Councillor Barnett. All those in favour, unless there's any discussions or questions. Thank you, everybody. And item 12.6, council activity update. Councillor Lebacker, you the one who would like to move it.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And speak to it.
Yeah, briefly, I'd just like to welcome the addition of the council activity report. So this is basically non-confidential operational information, which previously councillors have been receiving, but it hasn't been clear what's been confidential and what we can share. So this puts it in the public realm, so I think it's a really good snapshot of some of our operations, some of the not so sexy stuff that goes out in our sort of e-news, but I think it's really good sort of nuts and bolts stuff that shows that we're getting busy and we're hitting targets. So thank you very much for the addition.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Good job, Councillor.
Any further discussion? From the Chair, I'd encourage, thanks to the directors for the reports. Let's have a look at these over the next couple of meetings and continue to put our mind to whether we think they're hitting the mark, because this is a new initiative that we're doing, new to us anyway, it might be done in other councils. So let's read through those, and if there's any recommendations for any changes, then I'm sure the administration will take those suggestions on board. I'm going to ask Councillor Lebacker to sum up, and then I'm going to give the floor to the CEO for a couple of minutes to speak briefly as well.
And just on that point, look, I don't think elected members mind if we get the information twice, so send it out to us in a timely manner and then it appears a second time, because it's really just the fact that some of this information can be in the public realm. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. CEO?
Yeah, all I wanted to add, members, was obviously the intent here was to take what you had previously been receiving in those activity updates in the CEO update, move it into council reports. One of the challenges we will face here is that, as you all came to understand, those activity updates were a bit chunky. In 1 month or even in 1 fortnight, you may have a very significant activity update, and in other months you may have less going on. Even internally, we're struggling with what that might look like in a public space. So we'd love your feedback. We really are keen to get it. In particular, if you don't see stuff in this update that you used to see in the CEO update that you think should be in there, let us know, because that's the sort of feedback we'd really love, so that we can try and meet your expectations in this regard.
Thank you, CEO. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13, council member reports and briefings. We have one tabled by Councillor Nelson, thank you, and also by Councillor Barnett. Thank you very much for those reports. Busy month. Okay, item 14, motions on notice. 14.1, motion on notice. Sorry, so the notice of motion. Village Heart Strategic Plan. I will move that for the chair and speak to it. Recommendations on page 352. So the reason that I put forward this proposal was because I think from time to time it's important to reflect on a piece of work that we've done and determine whether that work has hit the mark or whether it's not, and whether there's more work to do. So if we go back in history, the strategic plan and recommendations from which a lot of the actions were derived that sees the Village Heart as it is today is about 15 years old or thereabouts. So it was created at a different time. Some of it still resonates strongly as an enduring vision, and I think that there's some really good aspects to the previous report. However, the world has changed, and the City of Adelaide and the metropolitan area has changed around us as well. And I want to be certain that we're able to stand back in 10 years' time, whether we're sitting at this table or not, but we're still engaged with the City of Prospect, and see that we still hold that position, which is the preeminent village heart in the north of the metropolitan area, and maybe even perhaps all around the metropolitan area. And I think that we can only do that if we can revisit our vision and see what we need to do from a strategic perspective to achieve that goal. I don't think we can let a plan sit for 25 years. Things move much more rapidly than that. And we see a lot of things going on around us that may have an impact on the City of Prospect and the village heart. So O'Connell Street is the most obvious example, but over time, Unley Road, King William Road, McGill Road, a lot of areas around the City of Prospect and the City of Adelaide, have all moved forward. So the concept behind this is to look for a budget bid which the team would put together if this motion was carried, to progress a Village Heart 2035 strategy with quite a lot of aspects to it and all the things that we'd normally expect. So that's the intent behind it. I'd like to have a plan in place for us to move forward to and continue on the good work that has been done over the last 15 years. Okay, so that's me moving to our seconder. Councillor Backer.
Look, thank you for bringing this forward. And look, I didn't put my council activity report in, but I did attend both the Churchill and the Prospect Road Traders group meetings, and we've got some really enthusiastic participants there. What was obvious is that, they're looking for the next quarter or the next season, but what we actually need is like a 5-10 year plan and a strategy to follow. I think it's really great that we've got that old document, and I think that there are some things that's still relevant, but it does need to be revisited. I was going to put a plug in for my placemaking workshop in January as well, because I think it's all part of the same discussion. It's the why we're doing things, and that's to do with public art, infrastructure, communications. It's the why, and I think this is what the strategic project will do. But I'm hesitant and a little bit. I know we've had a Village Heart car parking study, and we've had master plans done before, but we haven't seen anything on the ground. And I think what people want to see is things or signs or whatever. So there's a lot of practical outcomes that people want to see, and I think it will be really informative to see what we get for this and what budget we have for doing stuff on the ground as well. So though I am supportive, you'll note the CEO comment that unless members are prepared to fund and resource both the strategic plan and its outcomes, this process is unlikely to deliver positive results. So I want to be a little bit more optimistic than that, but keep in mind we can't just keep doing things. Come budget time next year, elected members have to be of a mind if we want to do all these things. We either have to cut or we raise rates. So I'm supportive, and I would support it in a budget process, but I'm also keen to revisit things across our service level and see what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any further discussion? Let's do it again. Any further discussion? Still the same. Councillor Barnett's hand's higher, so I'm going to go Councillor Barnett, Councillor Nelson, and then Councillor Dirk.
Okay, I must learn to really
It's really high. I was lazy.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think it's a sort of timely idea or strategy, because we're also say we're including this, in with our the precinct, living precinct plan. That's the centre, and yet we're still saying, that this is the heart, village heart. So we know most probably have other village hearts, but they're not explicitly laid out in a plan, and we're doing all these other things. So I think, to me, it would be interesting to tick off, a bit along Councillor De Backer's thinking here. So do we tick off, right, we've done that, or does that still need some more work on, given the time frames passed? What's been the impact of having Bantley here? The impact of having apartment buildings, so I think, there are a lot of, questions here that weren't around when we did this. So maybe it may not necessarily be a full-blown strategic plan per se, but some questions and answers, some what we've done, what do we think might need to be done a bit more there, how do we link it with our precinct building plan. Yeah, so it's just my stream of consciousness.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Mayor, I certainly commend you for bringing the matter to council, and I agree it's needed. We need to renew and develop a longer term strategy. But I just think for me there's very little detail here, not enough information to make a decision. As I say, there's no budget amount of what we're looking at here. I get that it's a bid, but can't support a bid, but I don't know how much we're bidding on. And best of my knowledge, prior to our budget time, we'll be asked to put forward budget bids anyway that we'll throw up there and we all vote on and everything else. So I personally don't see the purpose of this motion. Maybe that's just my ignorance. I also, in line with the CEO comments, trying to undertake this while doing the PLP, I think will put far too much pressure on staff and funding. We've got at least another 18 months worth of work on the PLP. We've got the staff working overtime on that, and we constantly say we're overworking the executive team. I just think timing's wrong. I think if this was 26, 27, absolutely I would support it with more information. But I think just the way it sits at the moment, I just think the timing's a little bit off.
Councillor Drake.
Yeah, look, thank you. I'm struggling a little bit with this one as well. And I just want to start with a question though. So the budget bid is number one. Is number two contingent on the budget bid getting up, or is number two happening prior to the budget bid going up? Just for clarity. Anyone?
Sorry, I'm just reading.
Oh, sorry.
Certainly assist by telling you how we would interpret it as an administration in its current form, through you, Mr. Mayor, and that is we'd only do it as part of preparing the strategic plan. So assuming the budget bid is supported and we ultimately begin preparing a strategic plan, a component of that would be, and a very early component would be, to review achievement under the previous strategic plan as a step. Now, if that's not the Mayor's intention, or maybe members had a different view, maybe wording that in a different way may assist. But as a component, an early step in preparing a new strategic plan would be to look at the past one. That's how I would.
That's how I accept it, given that it was my motion. Yeah, there's no. Yeah, it's linked. It's stage one of the work that is being proposed in part one.
That's how it reads.
Yep.
Okay, so from a linear perspective, the budget bid would happen first, then some work would happen to achieve review achievements. So I'm have tried and failed spectacularly over many years. I'm always really hesitant to pre-commit budget because something else might come along that we think is much more important if we've already effectively committed the budget bid. I know it doesn't commit the budget, but it commits a budget bid. I'm just always a bit nervous about that. I was actually going to ask for it to be taken apart. I may not do that now, but I was going to almost suggest I would support the second one, but not the first one, just on basis of process and principle. I think, though, more broadly, I think a little bit to Councillor Nelson's point around resourcing, I'm just a bit concerned about resourcing as well. I think that's kind of perhaps come out a little bit in the CEO comment. And also trying to understand whether it's actually strategy we need or is there something else for this road, because a lot of the building blocks are kind of set in place and they're probably going to change. There's a whole lot of other building blocks that can. And so I'm not sure whether this is a planning issue or whether it's an infrastructure issue or whether it's a public realm issue, or it's probably all three. And the other thing that's not in here that I thought might be good is the traders, as I'm saying, from them, and that would be the consultation, of course, but this is a piece of work that we could perhaps give to them and they could do probably a whole lot cheaper than what we could as a council. So I'm a bit conflicted by it, if I'm to be honest. Look, I will ask to take it in parts just because, as a principle, pre-committing budget bids, I'm concerned that there's no reason why it wouldn't go up as a budget bid, and I would absolutely support it going up as a budget bid during that process, but I'm always a bit nervous about pre-committing it. So I reserve the right to change my mind and vote for it still, but if we could take it in parts, that would be good.
Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I might offer maybe my interpretation of point one as well, because I think that might clarify what I feel might be a disconnect between you and I, and possibly between the Mayor and I on this, because I interpret point one as we prepare support a budget bid, support is we prepare one. A budget bid requires it to be form part of the budget process.
Mm.
And I understand that the terminology may be a bit loose, but I can't see that this would require council to commit to the budget bid as part of the budget before you've even seen it, which I think is what you're suggesting.
Well, I think the way it's worded is committing the council, not the administration, so council being the elected members, presumably, to support a budget bid. It's not saying can administration prepare one. If it said can administration prepare one, I'd be supportive of it.
Yeah, it's to prepare. So I was going to speak, because I'm allowed to the motion, so I will. So yeah, this is really wanting to get this on the table early, because I see it as a matter of importance, and we know that when the budgeting process starts to happen, as has been pointed out, there's a lot of activity that goes on at that point in time. So this is not in any way meant to say that this is a lay down desire, that this is going to be in the budget and it's locked in. This is essentially to ask the team to prepare a budget bid with a little bit of pre-work around it. So the reason why I think the timing is right is that when you need to make changes, it's already too late. What's the word? The gate has been shut. The horse has bolted. The horse has bolted. So if we wait until we see signs that we may lose the position that was stated in that previous document, and we see Econostrip coming out of the ground in the next 6 months, and we see them knocking on the door of Anchovy Bandit and knocking on the door of Rosemont Hall and knocking on the door of Mezamazone and say, hey, come into Econostrip, it's going to be amazing, we're going to just steamroll the competition. So by the time we start noticing the issues in any business, you're looking at indicators and you're looking at trends and those types of things like that, it's sometimes too late to do anything about it. So the reason that I want to get this underway is because, first of all, it has to get up in the budgeting process, and if it does, then the work has to take place. And then once the work takes place, if there are actions as a result, they need to be prioritised, they need to be costed, and they need to be executed. So we're talking about potentially a piece of work which might take up to 5 years to finalise. If we look at the previous work, there was a 2 or 3 year gap between the first kernels of it and it actually resulting in a plan. So if we wait too much longer, I think we're going to be in trouble, and if we get into trouble, we might find it's too difficult to get ourselves out. I understand that we've got lots of things going on at the moment, but when we approved the PLP process, we all congratulated ourselves on thinking strategically, and that's how we should be thinking. We should be thinking strategically for the long term and executing the plans in the short term. So I think that this is another example. The ITP is an example of thinking strategically, and I think this is a key example. I think everyone would hopefully agree that without the success of the Village Heart, Prospect overall wouldn't be anything like what it is today. That's had a significant generational impact on a lot of aspects of why we enjoy Prospect so much. So I think the timing's right. I understand if people don't agree with that. This is not asking for this to be locked in. This is just saying to the staff, can you prepare a bid with some meat around it for this as part of the budgeting process?
Just a point of order, did I still have the floor?
Sorry?
I haven't finished.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had.
No, that's all right. So just two things. One is
I've got 3 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to move an amendment, and I'm going to change the word support to prepare. I think, and that reflects probably more the intent.
Yeah, that could just be a variation, maybe more than an amendment. Yeah. So if you're happy for it to be a variation, then you just need to seek leave of the mover and the seconder for that, and I'm happy to. I can only say yes. I'm going to say yes.
That's right. They're all right.
Pardon? Yes. Yes, I think that makes it clearer.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I was going to say again, just picking up on something that Councillor Barnett said, just in terms of this being the Village Heart and how we make sure we kind of spread the love over this and PLP. And I was thinking, if we're the heart, the PLP is the belly button, because it is in kind of the middle of the city of Prospect. Well, it kind of is, isn't it? When you think about it. But I think that interaction, that's the toe or the toe. But I think we need to think about how those two things connect with this piece of work as well.
I'm sure that will come up.
Yeah,
I've mentioned that with Pierce when we were discussing this, that that will be a large factor which will have an influence on what the strategy. Part of it will be how do we link it to. Yeah.
Full stop.
I don't know.
No, nothing.
Thank you for that variation and happy to take it on board. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, I've said enough. So let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I'll do it.
Go for it.
No. No.
The old rule still apply, don't they?
Yeah, well, they do
Until next
for
meeting.
now.
That's right.
Oh, sorry. Did you still want to take it in parts, or were you happy with the variation now, not to take it in parts?
You took that democratic right away from me, didn't you?
I'm
happy. Not any chance. Yeah, exactly right. No one just listens to me.
Item 14.2, notice of motion, storage of radioactive waste at Osborne Naval Shipyard, put forward, and I take it moved by Councillor Vacker. Recommendations on page 400. Would you like to move that motion, Councillor Vacker?
Yes, I will, and it's slightly different to what was published in the agenda. So I'll read it out as it says. That's with the amendment. Yeah. So yeah, basically to send correspondence in regards to supporting. So City of Port Adelaide, for those of you who aren't aware, at a recent council meeting voted unanimously to oppose the storage of nuclear waste at the Osborne facility. It actually came about through their planning team. So obviously, the EPA, we have to manage the safety of our community. There was actually no way of dealing with it, so they've developed their own system to sort of deal with this new act that's come in from the feds. And I only found out about this, I was actually at Council and Wynn Street Corner meeting. A local resident brought it to my attention, and sure enough, and reading into it was quite concerning. So I don't want to be too alarmist. It's basically, this is to send correspondence and ask questions. So a nuclear storage facility, and there's obviously discussions about waste and low level waste and all that kind of thing. And this motion is not about not having submarines or all that kind of thing. It's just how the waste is stored. So there's about 3 or 4 terms. There's very short-lived waste, VSLW, which is your hospitals, or very low-level waste, VLLW, which normally go into rubbish streams about after a month or 2. Apparently, the proposed submarine waste is low-level waste, which needs isolation from the environment for hundreds of years. So it's just, I'm not an expert, but I'd like to ask the questions. So I'd appreciate support from its members for this. And obviously, a lot of people say, well, the arts ministry came and had a background in being aware of nuclear in our neighbourhood, but it sort of goes at odds. I guess we're talking about tourism and gather round and invest in prospect. When they're doing the studies for this, so when where the berths are, they're actually looking at safety zones within 15 kilometres. We're only 11.5 kilometres as the crow flies, so you know very well if there's a bushfire on Yorke Peninsula, the smoke is felt here. So just from a topographical point of view and the way that it blows. So I'm just really asking if we can get some support our biggest neighbour, our council, Port Adelaide Enfield, and get some more information on what that means. We've got 8 kindergartens and early learning centres, and we've got about 6 schools in the city of Prospect. And I just really needed to sort of ask this question, I think. So I hope you're support.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I was involved years ago with our nuclear-free and transport and all that type of stuff. So we do have that history, and we no longer have a stopping nuclear-free transport through the city. Somewhere that we got rid of that. So I think it's asking just very common sense questions, particularly supporting our fellow council, City of Port Adelaide Enfield. They've obviously got more information and that, and I think there's nothing in being wrong in being a bit more informed about these things. So I think it'd be a very good idea to find out some more information about it. And yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion? Councillor Nelson and then Councillor Brett and then Councillor Clark.
I'll just add some 2 cents. I've been fairly heavily involved in this with the AUKUS, with BAE and Babcock with the contract, so there's no conflict there. We've got a contract to supply some materials to BAE and Babcock. So I've known about this for quite some time, but it's interesting to hear the feedback because there are currently 135 locations around South Australia that are storing radioactive waste. Most people aren't even aware of that. So it's interesting the way things look at this and they get taken out of context. The whole world, or the whole country wants us to have all these jobs and all these new energies and everything else, but isn't willing to sort of put a little bit of waste here and there. I'm not going to go against this. I think it's fairly simple to write a letter and ask some questions, but I think it takes, people need to do a lot more research on these types of things before they go jumping to conclusions.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Councillor De Backer, for bringing this to us. I'm going to support it. However, I'm sorry to do this. I'm going to suggest a slight variation just because I think there is some risk that letter could be have a better lifespan. I'm trying to think of the new term. If we refer to AUKUS, and I'm just, with the state of international politics at the moment, AUKUS may not exist, but nuclear waste may still exist in Port Adelaide. So I just wondered whether we could just say, disposal of radioactive waste at the Osborne Naval Shipyard, just to take AUKUS out, because it kind of outlives AUKUS if AUKUS doesn't kind of continue. The other question I've got is this probably, and I wasn't aware of the different levels, but does this capture hospital waste? I'm thinking out loud. The motion at the moment potentially covers hospital waste. I wonder if there's any.
It's interesting. So specific to the Osborne, can I answer the question?
I'm just thinking about it at the moment. I just wonder whether there's more utility in maybe putting in what type of waste, or whether I'm being too pedantic about that. But I just thought, look, I'm going to leave it as that. That would be my variation, just taking out. I think that's a more important one. I was just thinking about the waste thing, whether that's an issue, but probably not.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask is the mover and the seconder whether they're.
I'll speak to that one.
No, I'm going to ask the mover and the seconder first of all if they're happy to accept the variation. So, mover happy to accept?
Happy to accept.
Seconder happy to accept? Councillor Barnett?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. So, that's the motion that we have on the table. Anything else from you?
No, thank you. But thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Hall.
Oh, look, I sort of read through the motion and I thought I did read a lot of alarm and fear and urgency. And look, I understand people are very much in the dark, but radioactive waste, and this Labor government has said, I've seen on a couple of occasions that it is low level, and there is a criteria for low level, and that is material that's, whether it's protective clothing, rags that they clean surfaces with, it's a lot of that disposable stuff being worn by people working in areas that have actually got a high radiation level. These people also, I know through my nursing years, I've worked on these sites, they wear monitors, live monitoring of, and they can tell the radiation levels, and they also know how much radiation is in this disposable stuff. So, and it's been around for decades. It is no different in the Submarine Corps. It is really just the gear that the workers are disposing of, that they're handling all the time. So it really, as Councillor Nelson stated, he gave a figure of 135. But 10 years ago, one of the MPs actually got some freedom of information, and I'll give you some statistics here. It's actually, well, this was 10 years ago. There were actually 928 sites statewide, and that was low to intermediate level waste. Just the Adelaide Hills had 39 waste sites. Metro area, around the 200 sites. So for those around Prospect area, North Adelaide had 7, Wingfield 11, for those around the Port Adelaide Enfield area, Gilman had 5 and Osborne itself had 21 storage facilities in Osborne itself, where this one is. So it really is, to me, just another one. This information is readily available. It's EPA has commented on it, and this is coming from the EPA, this information. I mean, I don't think it's cause for alarm. It's just another waste facility. Most of it is on site as well. And I've worked on these sites for probably a good part of my working life. So I don't think there's any cause for alarm there. I don't know if I necessarily need to support, I think people just need education, because we probably will see more nuclear in the future. If they stick to the strong regulation there, I think it's really quite safe. But look, if members want to send a letter off to get more information, I'm fine with that. But I don't see the alarm in this, and unless there is something I've missed, and this particular waste site is more dangerous or is different in some way, which I don't think it is, I'd like to know, and that would just good information for me. But I just see this as another waste site, and we've had hundreds and hundreds in the state.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Any further discussion? Councillor
Just a
Lewin.
question from me. As that stand, is that correspondence a letter from the CEO, from the Mayor, or from who?
Sounds like it's from me. I'll move to Councillor Backer to sum up in a second. I will note, I believe that the Port Adelaide Enfield Council voted unanimously in favour of, that might have been in the report, in favour of this. Over to you to sum up, Councillor Backer.
Yeah, look, I said it's a couple of letters, and I think it's clear around the table. We all don't know. Let's ask the question, and find out. So, because if we don't ask the question now, or say something now, and people are building their lives in Prospect, and it would be really good to know what the impacts would be. There is, there's links and links and links. There's a whole heap of consultation done, but if you watch the 7:30 report from last week, it's done after the decision was made. So I'm sure, let's all trust the government, they'll look after us. But can we please, if the act that's come in to enable this radioactive waste doesn't have a cap, it doesn't specifically call out low-level waste. So it's more just the fact there could be wriggle room for high-level waste. But let's ask the questions, let's not assume. So I'd encourage
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you for the motion, Councillor Backer. Item 15, questions with notice there are nil. Item 16, confidential items. So we'll just pause for a second.